worst airline ever. Never again will I fly Frontier. Absolute worst experience I've ever had flying, to the point I'd go back and pay double to Delta. Yikes! These were the reviews that I was reading before my first ever trip on Frontier. So how did it turn out? What was my experience like, and would I recommend it to you? Well, keep watching to find out. Hey y'all, and welcome. If you are new here, I am Christy, the Gen X Gypsy, and today I'm going to go over my first ever trip on Frontier Airlines. I'm going to go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's get started with how we ended up flying on Frontier Airlines to begin with. We started booking a trip to Puerto Rico way back in April to go for Thanksgiving. So we booked these really inexpensive flights on JetBlue. They were, I want to say, about $360 a piece, which at the time was a fantastic rate. And by September, they had taken our direct flight from Raleigh to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and changed it into a flight that flew from Raleigh to Miami, a 4-hour layover in Miami, and then from Miami to San Juan, Puerto Rico. Needless to say, we were not thrilled with that extra layover time in Miami, especially when a direct flight from Raleigh to San Juan is less than 4 hours. So we started looking around at other options, and Frontier Airline had an amazing deal of a baseline ticket for about $280. Some of our friends that we were traveling with have traveled on Frontier quite a bit, and they've been very pleased with their experiences. So we went ahead and booked those tickets. When I got to the booking online, I found that it really wasn't that much different than all the other airlines. I've read a couple of things where people have complained about their booking system online. I didn't see where it was that much more complicated or different than booking on American or Alaska. So I'm not sure where those complaints are coming from. I think the main thing is that you have to be aware when you are booking a ticket on a budget airline like Spirit or Frontier or Allegiance is that they are a la carte airlines, which means you're going to pay for everything extra. The only thing you're getting with that baseline price is your seat and the space for your personal item underneath the seat in front of you. You're not even getting an assigned seat. You do have to pay extra in order to be able to pick out the seat that you want. With that in mind, and if you know that going in, then it's no surprise to you when you get to their online system for booking. Now, I went ahead and booked our tickets, and I added what they call their bundle. There are a couple of different options for their bundle, but it is a way to pay ahead of time and not get dinged with more expensive fees if you decide to add on baggage later on. The bundle I chose gave me a carry-on bag, a checked bag, and the ability to choose my seat and to get onto the airline a little earlier. Now, I wasn't planning on actually checking a bag. I was planning on just packing in a carry-on and my personal item. The way that the bundle ended up being, it was cheaper for me to buy it that way than it would have been for me to pay for my carry-on bag and pay for me to be able to pick out my seat. My ticket ended up being about $320 total with that bundle added in, which still had me paying less money than the JetBlue ticket that I had purchased before. Oh, and I should say as a side note, I did get a full refund from my JetBlue ticket because when they change your flights, they give you the option to cancel and get your money back. We actually didn't have any issues with that. We canceled, and like 3 days later, my money was back in my account. Just wanted to give that as an aside for a bonus for JetBlue. They did take care of us in that way, even though they kept changing their flights. When you are looking at baggage for flying on one of these budget airlines, you are limited to certain sizes that you can use for that personal item that's going to go under the seat in front of you and for the carry-on. So you want to make sure that you go to their website and look at the measurements that are allowed. Now, if you're using like a soft-sided duffel bag, you're probably going to be able to get away with a little bit more leeway than if you're using something that's a little more structured, like my carry-on bag. I just used a backpack for my personal item, and that fit just fine. If you are one of those ambitious people who wants to travel with just a personal item, down, kudos to you, because I'm not quite there yet. You need to make sure that your bag is going to fit in their little measuring thing that they have right at the gate, because they will ding you for the price of a carry-on bag if your personal item doesn't fit into that little slot. So just make sure you're very aware of that, because you don't want to get there and all of a sudden have a $50 to $60 surprise hit when you've just bought this like $30 ticket to fly somewhere. The prices that you're going to pay for your carry-on or your checked bag will continue to rise in price the closer you get to flying. When you are booking your ticket, you need to have a really good idea of how you want to pack. Because I want to say with my bundle, I only paid like somewhere in the $30 to $40 range for my carry-on bag, whereas by the day that we were leaving, I think the option was, if you hadn't paid for your carry-on bag, that it was up in the $50 to $60 range. So an almost doubling in price for what you have to pay for your carry-on bag when you wait until the last minute. Now I have a question for you guys out there. How many of you travel on these budget airlines like Spirit and Frontier and Allegiance on a regular basis? And are you the type who uses just the personal item to pack in? Because kudos to you. That is something that is very challenging to me, and maybe I'll try to do it at some point this year, but it's definitely going to have to be a very warm location. So now we are at the day of travel, and I checked in online. I downloaded my boarding passes and saved a screenshot of them to be able to use. And we get to the airport. We actually had no issues with checking our baggage in. I do believe that the kiosks weren't working correctly at the gate, but the people at the desk were super, super nice. In fact, they didn't charge us extra for the oversized surfboard that we were checking, which I had read online was going to cost us an extra $75. And they did charge us on the way back from Puerto Rico, but the desk people in Raleigh did not charge us for that. So I have to say, I'm giving the Raleigh, Durham, Frontier desk people some thumbs up, because I thought they were really, really nice and super helpful. So once we got through security and we got to our gate, didn't really have any interaction with the gate people all that much, except for showing my boarding pass to them, and they were very nice. All of that went well. We actually ended up boarding on time and got everybody on board so that we were able to leave about 10 minutes earlier than our scheduled departure time, which got us into San Juan about 20 to 30 minutes earlier than we were supposed to land. We did have to wait for a gate there, but not that long. We still ended up off the plane earlier than we were supposed to. Yay! That was a very good thing. Inside the plane, it's very simple. Like I said, when you pay for your ticket with just the base fare, you are paying for a very simple seat. It's very thin plastic, which does help with the fuel efficiency of the plane, because Frontier does tout themselves as the greenest airline in the sky. And one of the ways that they do that is by lessening the weight that they fly with. So those seats are compact, small, and kind of hard. So that's one of the not so great things about the seats. The seats are very firm and hard, so if you need a little extra padding down there, I would bring an extra blanket or scarf or something to sit on, because 4 hours it was starting to get a little uncomfortable. In addition, the seats do not recline. Now, I don't find that the seats on the regular airlines recline all that great anyway, unless you're in first class or business class, but not even having a little bit of ability to go back, it can make you a little stiff by the end of the flight. So just be aware of that. It would be pretty uncomfortable, I think, if you were flying more than 5 or 6 hours on those seats. For less than 4 hours, it wasn't terrible. Like I said, I kind of put my blanket that I travel with under my butt, and I was fine. As for legroom, I felt that there was actually a pretty decent amount of legroom. The way that the seats are made, like I said, they're super thin, so they kind of cut in on the seat in front of you, so it gives you a little extra room for your knees. I felt like the room was just as big, if not bigger, than some of the super economy seats that I have sat in for American and Alaska recently. I feel like they keep taking away more and more space out of those airlines, and it's just getting so cramped. On both flights going to Puerto Rico and coming back, I ended up in a middle seat because my boyfriend and I had booked the aisle seat and the window seat, hoping that we'd have the empty middle seat between us, but they were overbooked flights, and of course we ended up with somebody scheduled to sit in that middle seat. So we just switched with them, and I ended up sitting in the middle seat both times. And it was fine. I had plenty of space. In fact, on the way down there, I set up my computer on the tray table and worked on editing videos. It was a great use of time. While you're on the plane, if you want to get anything to eat or drink, you will have to pay for it. Everything costs money except for water, including coffee and tea, which I know are a little unexpected. Make sure that you are aware. Again, this is an a la carte budget airline, so everything will have to be paid for. They don't take cash, so you'll make sure you have a card in order to pay for everything. And the prices are about the same as what they are on any other airline. They're not any cheaper. They got to make their money somewhere, I'm assuming. That brings us to the only thing that I found was a negative with Frontier Airlines, and that was the flight attendants on our flight from Raleigh to Puerto Rico. They weren't necessarily rude and mean, but they weren't exactly the nicest of flight attendants I've ever had. They were a little grumpy and very, very stern when they spoke to you, like you were a child, kind of. And that was a little uncomfortable. Like I said, I wouldn't put it in the rude category, but it was pretty close, which was a shame because everybody else that we had dealt with for Frontier up to that time had actually been pretty pleasant. Now, I will give the flight attendants a little bit of leeway because I understand that this year has been really rough on flight attendants, and they've had to deal with some super crappy situations. And they're probably putting on that attitude to preemptively stop situations from happening by being a little more stern up front. It is the one thing that I found was not so great about flying on Frontier. Coming back, again, everything went pretty well. Our attendant in San Juan at the gate where we had to check our bags, she was helpful to an extent. She wasn't as nice as the desk people had been in the Raleigh-Durham airport. She did end up charging us for the surfboard, and we did have to take about 2 pounds of weight out of the surfboard bag and put it in other places. Usually, if it's just slightly over 50 pounds, the gate attendant doesn't really care. They'll be like, don't worry about it. However, in this situation, it was 52 pounds, and she actually made us take the 2 pounds out. So that was kind of like, whatever. But she was nice enough about it. She wasn't rude. She was just like, well, that's the rules. Overall, our flight back home was fine. I believe we ended up leaving a little bit late because there was some backup on the runway. I think we arrived like maybe 5 or 10 minutes later than we were supposed to. But otherwise, everything was just fine. It was a beautiful flight out of there. We got to see the sunset going down. It was gorgeous flying over the ocean. When we got to Raleigh, all of our luggage was there. We didn't really have to wait terribly long to pick up our luggage. In fact, no longer than I think I've had to wait for any other airlines. My experience with Frontier
was actually very good.
The downsides were the seats are not very comfortable. You do have to pay extra for everything, including your seat selection and your carry-on bag. And, the not so nice flight attendants, the flight attendants being a little grumpy. But honestly, I think that may be the situation almost all airlines right now. Everybody's a little tense on an edge. So when you're flying, be nice to your flight attendants. In fact, I watched Kara and Nate. I don't know if any of the rest of you guys are as addicted to the Kara and Nate videos like I am, but I've noticed that lately they are bringing a box of chocolates for their flight attendants when they fly. So that is something I'm going to start adopting, and when I fly, I'm going to bring my flight attendants a little something extra just to help make their day a little better. I would definitely give Frontier Airlines 2 thumbs up. I will be trying them out again, and I will let you know how that experience goes. If you're curious to see how I packed for 10 days in Puerto Rico in just a personal item and carry-on, check out this video next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.